play devil advocate on that. We went after a grant to fix up that field down there, and we were successful in the grant. Bill Day did a lot of work down there. Hanscom was the contractor, and I think it was partially Hanscom's problem, and we have never been able to get anyone from Hanscom to come in and talk to us about this. And I do have to say that I think there is some responsibility there. We've asked Tabitha, probably unfairly, to go back and talk to Mr. Hanscom, and him meeting one of our selectmen on the street and discussing it is very nice, but he needs to come in here. My recommendation is that we table this until we get someone from Mr. Hanscom's firm to come in here and explain to us exactly what happened and why it wasn't fixed at the time he received all that grant money to fix up that field.
I've included that in this packet of information. It wasn't done because Travis from CES recommended to John, and I will quote it for you, saying, the original design included tying the whole system down the street into one discharge point. This would have made the system really deep and not as practical as it is to be about. Our revised design was based on information provided by Ricky at Public Works. We've assumed all the catch basins are connected. So that their discussion with the contractor indicated that the new discharge point can be provided, but it would require additional pipe to be installed, which is the pipe across the road. Their estimate would approximately be $4,700. But CES's thought at the time with the contractors was to wait and see if the catch basin could handle the water from the underdrain system. If it can't, then we would likely recommend moving forward with the revised discharge location. And Mr. Sutherland did write a letter to Barbara. That email's in March. The letter to Barbara was in May.
But this is all after the fact, after the work was done by Hanscom.
It wasn't Hanscom that decided that though, because let me finish. In June 5th is when Mr. Sutherland wrote a letter to Barbara asking what the board wished to do with connecting and paying the extra. Barbara gave that information to Mr. Underwood, and it was not discussed with the school board, so the school board did not know anything about this need to be done because we didn't discuss it. And that's not Mr. Sutherland's fault, and I don't know why Jim didn't bring it to us. I can't speak for Jim. But it's not Hanscom's responsibility either to say that it's their fault. They did what they felt the contractor was the best thing to do without incurring that extra $4,000. And so their suggestion was to wait and see if it can handle it. It obviously can't handle the water. Public Works has said the same thing to me when I had Ricky down there with me.
Well, we all know that it can't handle it now. What my point is, and what my point was the last time we had a meeting and we talked about this, I feel that Hanscom has some responsibility from the original work. And we cannot get him to come in here and talk to us about it. Now, the letters you're talking about are after the original grant and the original work. The original contract was given to Hanscom, as I understand it. And that's what I'm talking about. I would like to speak to Mr. Hanscom and find out why it wasn't done at that time.
Because the school board didn't give him an answer. I'm answering you for that tonight, telling you.
Well,
so therefore, I don't know who made the decision not to tie it, but the school board didn't discuss whether or not we wanted to try that or not. Travis from CES and Hanscom apparently decided to try this route. That's the answer. I don't think Daddy's going to be able to give you any other answer.
Under whose authorization?
Well,
You're saying
John was apprised.
No, John wasn't here when the original work was done, were you?
Well,
It's not the original
it's
work
not the original
that's
work.
in question.
It's the last part of the project.
Yeah.
When Donnie Hanscom was uncovering the pipe, that's when he found that it wasn't connected to the catch basin. And he made the improvement to connect it. So in talking with Travis Noyes, Travis recommended that they connect it to the catch basin and see if it would handle the flow of the water before incurring the additional costs.
And that was all after the original contract.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's been my understanding is that there's been multiple projects down there to try to remedy the field. This one here seems like it's doing a pretty good job. It looks like we need to put the
just not
finishing touches.
sufficient enough. And I'd like note in the June letter where Mr. Sullivan is asking us what the school wanted to do on connecting the two catch basins. At the end of the letter, it says that the Lubec Board of Selectmen have discussed the idea of splitting the cost to move the project forward. That was mentioned in June, and it's my understanding that's in regards to the extra $4 grand. And you guys have discussed it before,
Right.
of splitting, so.
But I mean, you know, the other concern that we have is, if that was something that we knew before the budget committee, we could put a line item in. I mean, the budget that was put forward is pretty bare bones, and then we got cut even further. I know I've talked to Randy about it, he's expressed some concerns, going forward in this budget. So, I mean, we're gonna really have to watch ourselves. Is this something that we could put in maybe next year? Or is this something that has to be now?
I know I talked to John today and I talked to Randy today, and they are in favor of putting a stop on any new expenditures until we start collecting tax money. So truly, I don't think we could eke out $2,000 at this point. It would, I mean, if you folks approve it, if you decide to pay it, it's gonna have to be later.
I think they have funding to fix it.
That's just one audit, we're still waiting for 2012 audit. Who knows what would happen that and what didn't happen that. That's being worked on at the moment. You can't go on money from 3 years ago.
Okay, let's,
Well, when you put forth a budget that doesn't cover, to begin with, what our expenses are gonna be, then it goes to the town and they cut it even more. I knew we were gonna be in this situation, so we're gonna have to borrow money for something.
well, I don't think we need to borrow money for something like this. However, is there any other additional discussion before we take a vote? We have a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, splitting the cost with the school. Those opposed? The motion did not carry. Okay, new business.
John and Nicole Finney, John is here tonight to discuss Spruce's. It's an establishment out on County Road. There was some concerns with the liquor license application that was filled out, the hours of operation.
Okay. John, you want to come on up?
Why, sure. So I know Nikki put 9 to 9 on that, and I don't know how that happened. I thought it was perfectly clear in the initial meeting.
When you came to the meeting, when we had the public hearing, I asked you, was that correct? And I went back and looked in the minutes to see, and you said, yeah, I think we could work with that. So maybe you didn't understand when I asked you the
My
question.
state application is, you know, it's during the week, it's at 9 o'clock, and then
Right.
Yeah.
1 o'clock on the weekends.
It says 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So what are your hours?
It's actually open at noon, and
Okay.
during the week it's until 9. You know, between 9 and 10. Before we get out of there. On the weekends, it's somewhere between 12 and 1.
Okay. So the last time, everyone should be out of there by 1 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. You had an incident there, which I'm sure we're all aware of. And whether right or wrong, it was stated in the paper that the incident happened at 2 a.m. Is that
No, that was
incorrect?
true.
Okay.
And that paper didn't interview me about what happened. But it happened around 11:30. That's when that happened.
I'm assuming that you've made some changes in your operation since that incident?
Oh, yes, you have. I mean, on an initial startup, I mean, it takes a while to weed out people you don't want there. I mean, you just can't say, okay, you don't have a tie on, so you can't come in. I mean, it took us a while to weed some people out.
Okay.
There
And
was
you have
a few that I wanted to weed out, so,
You have a procedure in place if you have an incident start?
yes.
Okay. Because honestly, some of us have gotten feedback from people that are concerned.
But I mean, it was one crazy guy. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, it happens at Anna's, you know, once a month, there's usually
Sure.
a brawl out there.
sure.
This crazy guy just happened to wield a knife, stabbed 2 people in front of his mother. So, I mean,
Wow.
it's-
Well, I think it can happen in any establishment that's serving liquor. It can happen in an establishment that isn't serving liquor. But what our concern has to be is there a procedure in place to stop the incident as quickly as possible? I think Anna's pretty on top of anything that goes down.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I could write procedure if you'd like, but I mean, this all happened in 30 seconds.
No, I think we just.
It was
need
dead gone.
insurance.
It was, that, yeah, there's no procedure would have worked. I don't know.
I mean, I've heard, and again, secondhand, thirdhand, some of the neighbors had some concerns that, you know, it was going on well beyond one o'clock. What has happened to change that?
Now, that isn't true. We've always had it at 1. But the state says quarter after 1,
Right.
all the liquor
Right.
at the tables. And that's when we start filing people around 12:30 is last call and file them. And I know I've got some elderly neighbors there and they're concerned, they live alone. Breakfast for one, I don't know if she's complaining or not, but that's a moot point. You know, and I tried to address their concerns. We actually had a community meeting out there at the church in West Lubec. And they voiced their concerns, and I tried to address the concerns, so. I don't know if we've had any complaints since then. I feel we haven't, because I really, and the time we got the noise complaints and all this was happening was when it was 90 degrees outside, and I had to open all the windows and doors just so you could breathe in the place. So, and the noise was probably a little, but now I've addressed it, all the windows and doors are buttoned up at 9 o'clock. I've got to start with, actually, I think, I've talked to Bubba about it, and I've talked to Gladys about it, and they seem to think it's, you know, it's gotten a lot better, so.
Good.
And I put air conditioners in, so I can,
Yeah.
open the windows.
Right.
We take it a little bit.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for coming in.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
And next year I'd like to amend that, because I really don't know how that passed through us, but we had so much paperwork to fill out at the time we were opening. The 9 to 9, I didn't even plan on opening at 9 o'clock in the morning when I had a breakfast club.
You know,
So is
Well,
there a
that
way
didn't
that you
happen,
can change
but-
that on there?
He can change it on the copy that John has and just initial it. Okay.
But have you got any feedback from the neighbors, the local neighbors? Is it getting better, or you had any more complaints?
I think John and I both got feedback on the meeting that you had at the church, and it was positive,
yeah.
Excellent.
so that's great. Appreciate
I'll
it.
try to work with, I'm a good neighbor. Try to be a good neighbor.
Just looking for a job.
Austin. Austin.
Yeah, there you go.
All righty. Does anyone else have any questions? We'll let you off the hot seat, John.
Thank you. Y'all, good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item to discuss is Downey CMS. Steve Roach, the director of Downey CMS, is here. One of the items that's been discussed is Downey CMS has a transfer base in Machias. And there are some concerns with the base itself. And one of the alternatives being explored would be to temporarily house the ambulance and the crew in the Lubec base. One of the first things I did was I contacted Bobby Hood, and I asked him, you know, how he felt about it, bringing over the additional unit, and he said he had no issues for it. He felt we had the space. So I said, okay, I talked to Steve. We talked about it at a board meeting. I said, well, probably the next step would be talk to the board of selectmen. So this is a temporary move. Steve?
Yeah, the original base, if you remember, was meant to be down there for 6 months, and we're on our 13th right now, so it's time that we look at quarters that are a little more applicable to what we should be doing. So hence, to do that, we'd like to be able to swing everybody up Lubec for a while, and we're going to do some scheduling and so forth, so because we can't fit too many people in that room there. And then we want to establish something else down in the